Section 8 landlords in Los Angeles are getting a $300 a month Section 8 decrease due to what they say are funding cuts. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have quite the interesting article for you today, and it's coming out of the city of Los Angeles. And once again, it has to do with the whole Section 8 issue, okay? Now, I've told you stories about how landlords in some places are, they're being banned from rent increases. And I've told you how a lot of the cities are losing funding and they're having to make big cuts to the Section 8 payouts. Now, Los Angeles is one of those places. They're saying, hey, we don't have enough money. We're not getting the big increase in rental the big increase in tax income from the taxpayer to pay for all this free rent for these Section 8 tenants anymore. So we're going to have to make cuts. And what that really comes down to is a $300 a month decrease in the amount that they can pay landlords for apartments. Okay? So this is specifically for one bedroom. I'm sure it's probably more for more than one bedroom or two bedrooms or for single family homes or whatever, right? But the amount that Section 8 is willing to pay landlords to rent a one bedroom has declined by $300 a month for the next year. Okay? Bad news. Absolutely horrible for landlords who are depending on at least being able to maintain the amount that they're getting paid right now in order to cover their expenses. Now, for a large apartment complex, this could be just devastating. It could bankrupt them essentially, okay? And especially when you're considering the fact that there's strong tenant protections in Los Angeles. So even if they wanted to remove those tenants from the apartments and then put market rate tenants in there who are paying the amount that the apartment would go for at market rate, well, they can't. They absolutely cannot because the city won't let them. Okay? They're double screwed. Now, I wonder how many bankruptcies, how many of these real estate and landlord businesses are going to be destroyed by what's going to go on here. As I've said before, do not become dependent on the government because this sort of thing, it's bound to happen eventually. Eventually. Yeah, you might have 20, 30 years where everything's going right. But one day they're going to say, hey, we're out of money. We're out of other people's money to spend on these programs. And is this a good thing? I think in the long term, yes. In the short term, it's going to be quite painful. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. So what do you think of this whole situation, okay? Section 8 landlords in Los Angeles are taking a $300 a month decrease in the amount of rental income that they can get paid, okay? I know for some of my units, my profit is $300 a month. So imagine 100% of your profit just being gone like that. So you're no longer making a profit. For some people, especially in places like Los Angeles, it might be slimmer margins than that. So you might only be making $200 a month. Then they say, hey, we're taking $300. So now you've gone from making a profit every month to losing money every single month that you own the building. And keep in mind that banks, especially when we're talking about commercial properties here, they base their loans on your rental income. They base, how much they're willing to loan you on the rental income. So if you suddenly are taking a $300 a month decrease on every single apartment within your building, the bank will not loan you the same amount of money. And that can mean that people can easily end up upside down. Easily. Anyway, I'm going to get into this article and tell you exactly what it says. This article is coming from LAist.com, and it says, LA housing vouchers will soon cover less rent. City officials blame Trump funding cuts. Yeah, they want to blame Trump funding cuts, but hey, the gravy train is over, okay? And they gave away too much money. That's simply put. In my opinion, what probably would be better would be to increase basically make it so that fewer people would be able to obtain these vouchers. Make it harder for people to obtain, so you have to give away less of them and give them only away to people who truly need them, instead of having this huge class of people who are 100% dependent on the government to pay their rent for them. That's what my opinion is, right? And instead, you streamline the program by not providing less benefits, but making it harder for people to get those benefits, okay? That's my personal opinion. But anyway, let's get into the article and see what it says. LA housing vouchers will soon cover less rent. City officials blame Trump funding cuts. More than 50,000 low-income families in Los Angeles are only able to afford the city's high rents because of the Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher program. But soon, those vouchers will cover less rent, leaving many tenants with fewer places to go. Officials with the Housing Authority of the City of Los Angeles say Trump administration budget cuts have forced them to reduce how much rent they can subsidize moving forward. Starting August 1st, rent limits for the new Section 8 leases will decrease by 10%. Hyung Linda Park, a legal aid foundation of Los Angeles attorney who works with voucher holders, said tenants will have to face tough choices. They have to settle for worse or smaller housing, Park said, or they could lose their voucher. Yeah, and that's the same reality that everyone else in the market faces. Yes, absolutely. No, the government will not provide the biggest, greatest, nicest housing possible. And yeah, you might have to live in a crappier area. Yeah, you might have to live in a small, you might have to move from that 1 bedroom down to the studio, or the 2 bedroom down to the 1 bedroom, or from a house down into an apartment in order to make the rent based on what the government is paying for you. But everyone has to do this. If I lose my job today and then the only job I can get is going over to work at Walmart, guess what? I can't afford the house that I'm sitting in right now. Okay, and if I can't afford the house I'm living in right now, I have to make the tough decision to figure out a new place where I can afford. And yeah, it sucks, but the matter's more under my control than under government control. So I'm talking about two different issues here on purpose, because even though I'm a landlord, even though I support making money off of real estate, right? I also have a huge issue with these socialist programs. I think that the socialist programs cause our taxes to be too high, and that they are just hugely detrimental on the marketplace, okay? And part of the reason why rents are so high in a place like Los Angeles is because the government subsidizes so many people's rent. Landlords were able to charge more because the government was paying so much. And then they based their whole business on that higher rent that the government was paying. Now, I support landlords. Remember this, right? But I don't, I would never personally base my whole business model on getting a check from the government. I wouldn't do it. I don't believe in that. I don't believe it's a good idea, and I was a Section 8 landlord, but I never had more than a couple of units at a time that were with Section 8 tenants, while the grand majority of my tenants were with just regular market rate. Okay, and the reason that I did that was because I didn't want to become dependent on the government. I almost feel like when you are a landlord like that, you're like a government contractor, and the ups and downs of the government are just, it's ridiculous. Okay, so what is the solution to this problem? The first thing I believe is that landlords, like I said, should minimize the amount of tenants they have that are Section 8. Okay, minimize the amount of money they have coming in from the government. That's what I believe. Now, I should, say small landlords. Now, big landlords, I would probably suggest the same thing. This can be devastating for a big landlord, especially imagine you have a multi-million-dollar apartment complex and it's valued at, millions of dollars less due to these cuts. Wow. And you have to refinance this year. Could you imagine the issues? Obviously, there's going to be some real problems. And I forgot about that wealth tax that they passed in Los Angeles, the mansion tax, that any property sold that's worth over $5 million has to pay this ridiculous wealth tax, you know? So there's going to be a lot of people hurting, okay? But anyway, I'm going on multiple different rants here. The point of the story, though, is that landlords are going to be getting paid a lot less for Section 8 tenants coming up really soon.